NHL fans, the wait is over. The National Hockey League gets underway on Tuesday, October 11th, and last season, 8 Wager Talk handicappers went over 50 units in the NHL. To celebrate the start of the season, we are offering a 7-day NHL package for only $49. Yes, that's only $7 a day, and it will be valid through Sunday, October 9th. Don't worry, NBA fans, we'll be running the same special for you next week.
What is up, guys? Welcome back to Wager Talk TV. You're watching Puck Time. I'm Andrew McInnis, and it is October 13th, Thursday, which usually means football, but no. We're talking some hockey, guys. After a winning night last night here on the show, 2 great days of Puck Time. Bryan cashed his best bet with Carolina, team total over. I cashed my best bet as well with Boston, Washington over. Let's keep this thing going. After a great show yesterday and some unbelievable games yesterday. I mean, Connor McDavid, just a casual hat trick to start off his season with 3 goals, including the game winner. Got to mention, of course, my Montreal Canadiens end up cashing a huge underdog ticket. Of course, I didn't bet that, but I was just happy to see them win. Today's games we're breaking down. We have the Capitals and the Leafs, both teams there in revenge for tonight. Rangers and Wild should be an outstanding matchup there. We have the Avalanche and Flames and the Stars and the Preds going head-to-head. We've got lots of great games, competitive games going tonight here. Bryan, I want to welcome you in. Congratulations on the great results last night, Bryan. We had a great show together. How was your night overall last night?
Yeah, we swept the board for clients, then also gave out additional play here on the site, and we won. So that's nice to do, especially after losing my first play in a game that won overall. So at least you're seeing the card right, and that's the way it should be. It's nice to start the season that way. Just about everybody on the show here, I believe, has gotten off to a nice start for the season.
Absolutely. I got to give a huge shout out to everybody in the chat box, everybody that tunes in live, all the comments. We do see you guys. We do really appreciate it. The views early on this season have just been incredible so far. So, guys, keep hitting the like button, keep sharing around this show if you do like it. And if you're on the go, if you're in your car, if you're out for a walk, whatever you're doing, we are available on podcast platforms as well. You can also check out the Wager Talk app. We now have an app here at Wager Talk. You can grab that on Roku and all your different Android and iPhone devices. Checking out Puck Time and all the other great shows you can find over at Wager Talk TV. But Bryan, like I mentioned, lots of great games today. And, we always try and pick ones with close odds or, tight games or just really competitive ones with some really, talented rosters. And sometimes with that, it becomes a little challenging to find the best bet, whether it's a side or a total or a prop. So we're going to try and do our best here. But I like discussing these high-end games. And let's start off here with the Capitals and the Maple Leafs because, well, both clubs find themselves in a revenge situation, not against each other, but it's a rapid revenge spot after dropping games last night. Toronto, a little bit different, a little bit of a tighter game there, but they were big favorites in that one against my Montreal Canadiens. And I was just jumping around in my house after the end of that game. But Toronto, they lose by 1. And, kind of a tough defensive performance there from them. And Washington, well, I talked yesterday about that game and how I just take a look at it. And I really just didn't really think that they deserved to be that big of favorites. I like them and didn't think they deserved to be that big of favorites. And, of course, they get knocked down by the Boston Bruins. They're now plus 170 tonight against the Maple Leafs. If anybody has any interest in the total here, it's 6.5. I assume that we'll see most Maple Leaf games this year at 6.5 or 7. But what are your thoughts initially when you see this number? Because I always love asking you that, and I like hearing kind of what you made prices on games. The Maple Leafs minus 200, of course. The public loves the Maple Leafs. I don't know why, but they do. And they're really big favorites. And you know what? They have a great roster. And you know what? A lot of their newer guys, younger guys even, are going to make big plays for them. It's interesting as well to mention before I throw it to you that they do have, I haven't seen it listed as 100% confirmed. I'll check, but I believe Ilya Samsonov will be the starter tonight for Washington. So that'll be, for Toronto. So it'll be kind of a revenge game for him, I guess, against his former team. But what do you think here as far as this matchup and as far as the odds here in this game?
It was interesting watching the games yesterday. I tried to watch as many as possible. I talked about on yesterday's show how Washington struggled at home last year. I expected them to come out with a really good effort at home, and they really didn't play well. They played a Boston team. We talked about the injuries from both sides in that game. A Boston team that, with the new coaching staff, came out and looked really good against this Washington team. That concerns me a little bit. So maybe Washington will get off to a slow start here to start the season because they just didn't look very good yesterday. I had the pleasure of watching the Montreal game from the beginning when they had all the announced the players. Congrats to the Montreal fans. It was a lot of fun watching that. Unfortunately, I don't speak French, so I'm not sure I caught everything in that situation. But that was a tough place for Toronto to go on opening day, knowing those two teams are such a big rival. Montreal, I'll be looking to play against Montreal the next game. Let's just put it that way. I think they gave everything they could in that game against Toronto. Really disappointed with the first string of Toronto. Their best players did not really produce much offensively in yesterday's game. I think that may turn a little bit here. I expect them to have a good game here. Toronto 31-10 last year at home, been dominant in that building. They have a lot of offensive talent. They really didn't show last night. So I'm looking for a way to play Toronto in this game. Yes, the line's a little bit high, but I think for good reason here in the second of a back-to-back. You mentioned the goalie for Toronto gets a chance to go against his former club. I think that's a special meeting for them. So looking to fade Washington a little bit here. Like Toronto, the line's a little prohibitive, but I think we can find a way to bet the Maple Leafs here and make some money.
I think we can too, and especially because the fact of the matter is, Brian, I trust their backup goaltender more than I trust Washington's backup goaltender. And that's what you get when you get these back-to-backs happening here. Talk about the first string, the first line for Toronto. Yesterday, I was talking about Mitch Marner over 2.5 shots on goal. I think he got every one of his shot attempts blocked. Montreal, last year, Brian, I think the average was about 16. The best team in the league that had in blocks per game had, I think, close to 16 shots blocked per game, or they blocked 16. Yesterday, Montreal had 27 block shots.
Wow.
I mean, that's huge for them, but it stinks for me having some Maple Leaf players over on their shot total. We saw Mitch Marner start last season 11-2 as far as his over on shot prop to 2.5. Sometimes when people lose bets, and they lose kind of a thought like I had yesterday with Mitch Marner, they just will go away from it and say, oh, well, he had a bad game. I'm done with it. Sometimes with me, it's you got to prove me wrong twice, and I think that after him not shooting it as much and getting some shots blocked when he did, I might go right back to it. And just for people out there watching, these plays will eventually turn into client plays. But for right now, Brian, I'm just kind of testing the waters with the props. I don't like to play props right away out the season, but I am paying attention to all of these numbers. But I'm right there with you. I think the Maple Leafs bounce back. I think as chalky as it is, I do think Austin Matthews scores. I mentioned this last year that people can call me out all they want for taking the most, favorable guy to score a goal. But when he scores 60 goals in a season, well, he's scoring more often than not. So, hey, even though it's a favored bet for this guy to score a goal, when they have success as a team, usually he's right there with them, Brian, and scoring goals. So I like that team total as well with the Toronto Maple Leafs. And we talked about team totals yesterday on the show, Brian, how sometimes it might be the way to go. You could definitely argue with this Maple Leafs team, it's going to be really the way to go this year. You don't have to worry about Jake Muzzin or Justin Hall making bad defensive mistakes because you don't care what the other team does. All you care is what the Maple Leafs are doing.
Yeah, great points. And one thing that you talked about that we need to take a look at is the block shots. Living in Vegas, I'm around a lot, and I'll see a lot of other players on the team out with their kids at the bookstore, restaurants, and things. And these guys get beat up majorly all the time. And you talk about the block shots. I love Martinez for the Golden Knights. When he's in the game, he just throws his body around all the time, which is why he's injured a lot. But it's such a big differential for the guys that do that. And when you find a Montreal team that did that, number one, tremendous effort for Montreal in that regard. Number two, those do cause injuries, and people are a little hobbled. And so you're playing the next day, you're playing the day after that. Keep that in mind. But when you use that kind of effort in one game, it's tough to come back the next day. Now, luckily, Montreal's not playing today. But from the other side of that, Toronto has that ability now. And Washington, the second of a back-to-back, maybe is less likely to put their body in front of those pucks. So, I'm with you. I think Toronto's the way to go in this game. I like the Toronto goals over. It's reasonable. Unfortunately, in a different game we're not going to discuss, Pittsburgh is in a situation like that. But when you're looking at least the early numbers for Pittsburgh's goals, it's over 4.5. Now, it's plus like 130, 150. But the problem is the goals in the entire game are 6.5 to the under. So you need to have 5 to win that bet, and you're only supposed to score maybe 6.4 goals the entire game between both teams. So it's you have to pick your spots there. So, as much as I want to find, I'm going to find something on Pittsburgh to bet tonight, but I'm not laying $4 or whatever it is, and I'm not going to play that over 4.5 at that number, because when you're asking a team to score 5 of 6.4 goals, it's not going to happen very often.
Yeah, it's funny when you see a price like that, like well over the minus 200s on an over 3.5 team total. And then you get the 4.5, and all of a sudden you take a look at it, it's the same price as, it was for the puck line, right? I mean, you might as well just take the puck line at that point and hope they win by multiple goals. I actually have my show best bet in that game. So we'll go over that game a little bit later on in the show. But let's discuss the Rangers and the Wild. All over, pretty much from the betting community, from what I've seen, there's been lots of surprise based on what the opening number here was in this one here. Now we see Minnesota minus 140 at home favorites, the Rangers plus 120 underdogs. Total sits at 6 in this one. And of course, this will be the first game of the regular season for the Minnesota Wild. The Rangers opened up their season against the Tampa Bay Lightning in successful fashion. 2 goals from Mika Zibanejad, an unbelievable performance from Igor Shesterkin. So they got off to a great start to their season. And, of course, a great goaltender on the other side as well, one that you're familiar with, I'm familiar with Marc-Andre Fleury and all kinds of great forwards over there in Minnesota. But I got to say, whether it's a popular dog or not, Brian, I'm kind of scratching my head at this 140 price. I had this one being a lot tighter despite the home ice advantage. I do give New York a little bit of an edge for the fact that they are a team that's already played a regular season game. To me, I look at this game and I think that Minnesota, as much as they do have some decent defensemen, they want to play a back and forth, up and down the ice style of hockey. And I don't think the Rangers are going to let them, because they have really good defensemen, an outstanding goaltender, and they're comfortable winning low-scoring games. If I told you that this game finished 3-1, who do you think won that game? Probably the Rangers, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, I agree. And the one part, people have to understand when we do this game so early in the morning, most of the goalies have not been confirmed at this point. So there's a lot of games right now. There's a handful that have been, but at this point you're trying to judge what's going to happen. Now, during the regular season, when you've got a guy playing, they're playing 4 games in 7 days, you kind of could figure out who's going to come in and be the goalie depending on who they're playing, if it's a second of a back-to-back or something. But early in the season, it's all up to the coaches, and we don't know their rotation as of yet. So that is a concern in every game we're going to play. One of the reasons why I haven't put up any plays for my clients yet today, because I want to get some confirmation. I'm with you. I've got the Rangers rated as the better team here. I like Minnesota. I like the way they play. Obviously, love Fleury. Don't know if he's going to be in net tonight or not. We haven't found out for sure yet. But the only thing I could see of why the line would be a little bit higher is the Rangers put so much into that playoff revenge game against Tampa the other day. Maybe they think they're going to have a letdown here a little bit. I'm not so sure. I'm very familiar with the coach. He was out here in Las Vegas. He's a guy that keeps the team on an even keel for the most part. So I don't think betting the Rangers here is a bad deal. especially in this price range. It wouldn't surprise me if this gets a little bit tighter as the day goes on. So if you like the Rangers, I think to bet them now, this would probably be the best line that you find. And from an underdog perspective, this is one of the better underdogs on the board tonight. I don't know if I'll get there. We'll see later on, but I'm leaning towards the Rangers here.
Happy to hear we're on the same page, Bryan. And you mentioned the fact that it was a big revenge game for the Rangers. At the same time, though, at least they've played a game already. How much of a factor is that to you with your handicap, the fact that they have a regular season game under their belt? Because despite the fact that the Rangers are going to be away and Minnesota's at home, I mean, sometimes there's even more distractions at home, right? You introduce all the players, and it takes about 15 minutes to get it going, and the anthems, and all of a sudden, the Rangers already have done that. They're ready to go and locked in. Does that play any factor for you?
Yeah, sometimes it's an advantage, sometimes disadvantage. If you remember going back to college football for years, the teams that had the game under the belt were a team you wanted to play on. Well, that hasn't worked out so well the last few years. So it runs in cycles. It's a situation where, yes, the Rangers will be sitting in the locker room while Minnesota goes through all that. That was one of the concerns yesterday I had about Colorado. Obviously, they had the championship trophy and all that going on yesterday. Unfortunately, they were playing a bad hockey team in Chicago, so they didn't have to worry about that for the most part. But yeah, when you have a team that's going to have that home thing, I know Vegas is rolling out the red carpet tonight, where the players are going to be out there and they're going to sign things for the fans. So those are things that even were happening before the game, while the opponents are sitting there in the locker room or they're sitting in their hotel room. So that's an advantage the road teams have early on in the season here, and it's a situation for me that could come into effect here in the Rangers. Like I said, we're a team I'm looking to play, even though Minnesota was 31-10 last year at home. Very strong home ice, but the Rangers are the better team. That's what I'm looking at in this one.
That's a great point about their home ice. They did play very well at home. They protected home ice advantage. It's going to be a close contest. Like I said, I'm just kind of scratching my head by the number. That's all. Take a look at this next game. Really interesting one. You talk about rolling up the red carpet for the Avalanche, but it was a bad team yesterday against the Blackhawks. Look, I think Colorado probably could have played with 4 players half the game and had the same result. Blackhawks are just not really there on the Colorado Avalanche's level, but they're going to play a little bit tougher of competition tonight with the Calgary Flames. This time they're on the road. Calgary -130 favorites. Colorado +110. Total sits at 6.5. That was 6 overnight, but it has since moved to 6.5 here in this contest. Of course, lots to mention about Calgary, about Tkachuk. He's gone. Johnny Hockey, Johnny Gaudreau, he's gone. But they replaced those guys with, of course, Nazem Kadri, Huberdeau. They have Mackenzie Weegar on the defensive side. So, that week that Calgary had replacing those key guys, Jim Treliving, the GM, what an outstanding job he did after it was pretty much hell for that team for a couple days, wondering where their superstars went, and they replaced them pretty quickly. So Calgary's going to be a dangerous team, lots of hype surrounding them. But one thing I always say, how long does the chemistry take? How long does that take for it to develop, especially when you're playing a team like Colorado? So lots of snipers out there with Toffoli and Lindholm and all those guys. We'll see how they can match up against the Colorado team that seems to put up goals with ease. But what are your thoughts here, Bryan, on this matchup? It should be the game of the night.
Yeah, it should be. I really like this Calgary team, and the changes that were made, I think, make them even better. And you're right. It's going to take a while to get everything together, but hats off to the management over there. They did a terrific job. Colorado, all that going on yesterday with the banner and everything, there's got to be some sort of a letdown there. I'm kind of surprised. I know it's when you're playing hockey, you got your 4 lines there, and people go out and play. I was kind of surprised that they had a 3-1 lead early in the second period, and yet their major guys ended up playing 19-20 minutes. I thought they would play more of the bench. Obviously, there's the guys going to be coming in and off, but I was surprised they played the starters as much as they did. Toronto, in that regard, played a little bit less in that regard. So I think Toronto will be a little bit fresher team in the back-to-back than this Colorado team is. And it's not often you find the champion Colorado Avalanche in this price range. He's being an underdog. So it's interesting to see how the line has moved a little bit. And money's come in on Calgary. And I agree. Calgary's been sitting home waiting for this game. Colorado had all that hoopla yesterday. Second of back-to-back, having to travel. It's not often I'm going to fade a Colorado team as an underdog, but I think there's some value here on Calgary. I really do think so. Colorado's still the team to beat out west. I think this is a show-me game for Calgary, and especially when they get knocked out of the playoffs and now they can come back and play the team that won it all. Now, this is a big game for Calgary. I think Calgary plays big in this game. But look forward to the next time Calgary plays, and I haven't looked that far in the schedule yet. But if Calgary comes out of this and wins, maybe we could fade to Calgary after everybody looks at Calgary and say, hey, they just beat the champions. We get a good line against them next time out. That's what I'm hoping for. But I prefer the Calgary here, even though the line is a little bit higher than most people would project.
I love it. Stepping up and fading the defending Stanley Cup champions right away. I love it, Bryan. And you know what you just said there, I do the exact same thing. You know, you project things, right? You say, well, if that happens, then maybe I'll be doing this, and that happens. I'd be lying to you if I said I didn't do the same thing. You know, I think we all do that a little bit in different sports. And, you want to take it one day at a time, but you also see a team play a certain way. And, it's, let's say Pittsburgh loses to the Coyotes tonight. Right? Chances are we're going to be thinking they're going to right their wrong next game, or they're going to do yesterday. We look at the Leafs yesterday, losing to their rival and not even just losing to their rival, but really losing to their rival and not getting a goal from Tavares, Marner, or Matthews, right? There's certain unique situations you can look at and think there's going to be a bounce back spot. And so I like that you said that, because to me, I do that as well. And yeah. I feel like some sports, I know we don't want to get off track too much, but what about baseball? I mean, there's 162 games. I'm sure you think about that stuff all the time, because let's be honest here, not every game matters as much as the other one, right?
Yeah, I've always done it. I got my start 40 years ago doing the NBA, and a lot of it was schedule based. And you would find a team going off on a road trip. They're playing a weak team, then they're playing a really good team, then they're playing a weak team. Well, you kind of could figure out, depending on what happened in those earlier games, which games are coming out to play, which games they might rest one of their players. Something I didn't have to worry about 40 years ago, but you have to now. But that's the best way to handicap the NBA, I think, is just trying to figure out how the team is going to play in those games, which games are they up for. When you're playing the 82 games like they do in hockey and in the NBA, it's more physical, obviously, than baseball is. So you've got to be able to pick your spots, and the people that have success in those sports do it that way.
I mentioned that I'm going to be doing a lot more totals out the gate and the NHL season. And look, when I look at the Avalanche and the Flames, unless it's some type of playoffs are on the line or it's a really massive game, I don't really expect a lot of defense. And that's not really anything against them or their goaltenders as much. It's more so just me tipping my hat to how great they are offensively. It's unbelievable, these two rosters. And you know what's even crazier, Bryan? Yesterday, we saw the Blackhawks win the faceoff battle 61% to 39%. That is crazy. The fact that Colorado did so well, created so many chances, and they weren't winning any faceoffs, I think is something a lot of people should take note of with their hockey handicapping, because faceoffs are really important for establishing possession. So the fact that they won 39% of possession, I mean, they went 4 of 6 on the power play, which is really impressive as well. But I have to say, if you're a prop player in this game, this is the one that you're loading up on the Thursday night slate. Thursday is always a busy day in the NHL betting world, but if you like betting props, if you like betting guys over 1.5 points or shots on goal, this is the one for you. You take a look at a guy like McCarr, his over 1.5 points might cash every second game this year. He's unbelievable. He's a defenseman, but he plays better than most forwards do in the league, right? McInnis constantly cashing in on his over shots on goal prop. Arturi Lehkonen, a former Montreal Canadian player that I followed closely. You always get a good price on him to get a point, Bryan, because he's not really a superstar. like Rantanen and McInnis and those guys. So he falls under the radar a little bit. And you look at a guy like Toffoli over there for the Flames, his shots on goal prop. And Huberdeau, I know it sounds cliche because he's just the best player on that team, I'd say. But it's really hard to say that he doesn't have the green light, to shoot the puck as much as he wants or create chances and get involved in lots of action. So, look, I know Markstrom's a great goaltender. I still can't really say I've seen much from Colorado's goaltenders yet. I know Georgiev and Francouz aren't bad goaltenders. We've seen great things from both of them, but I still worry a little bit about Colorado. And you look at the matchup that Colorado goes from last night. They go from playing the Blackhawks to the Flames, just a little bit, a different competition here today for them. And I feel like that'll kind of wake them up a little bit. Some of the chances that they gave up against Chicago, when Chicago couldn't bury those chances, Calgary will. So I think we'll get over in this one. I expect lots of goals. And as a fan of hockey, I'm just excited to watch this game. It should be a really good one. But I like goals in this one. And Bryan stepping up, going against the Avalanche here, taking the Flames to win this game outright. Last game on the board, then best bets up. Before we get into the last game, though, I want to mention again that promo code or the promo we have going on at Wager Talk, guys. 7 days, $49, $7 a day for all NHL picks. Pick any handicapper you want from wagertalk.com. You can get all of their hockey plays for $49. Guys, look, I mean, it's all about testing the waters, right? If you want to find out a handicapper, how they handicap, how they analyze games, what their volume is like, if they play total, sides, or props, this is really the deal to do it. If you want to buy a month afterwards or a year subscription, they're giving you the opportunity to kind of test the waters. One play today, my best bet up at Wager Talk goes for $25. This is $49 for the entire next 7 days of NHL action. Bryan was the number one NHL handicapper last 5 years combined. I mean, that's unbelievable. So, guys, check things out over at wagertalk.com. Get your NHL packages, get your 7 days, and hopefully we can make some money with you guys. Our last game, Bryan, we have the Stars and the Predators. We have Stars plus 115, Nashville minus 135. Totals at 5.5 here. And I'll start with this. I mean, Nashville, they played over in Europe. They were over there for a little while. I picked this game because I thought it was an interesting situational bet. I feel like a lot of people will be on this as well, but it's hard not to think about the fact that Nashville might not be settled in back at home. They might be used to being in Europe. They were there for a while. They weren't just there for the 2 games against San Jose. They were there playing exhibition games and a lot of that good stuff. So I want to ask you about that and just in general, your thoughts on this matchup.
Yeah, that's a great point about Nashville getting back home and getting settled. They have 2 games under the belt, but they played the San Jose Sharks. And that's a team I'm looking to fade this year. So, it's a step up in class here against Dallas. I have these 2 teams rated, I guess, tighter than what this line is telling you. I mentioned the Rangers were a team that I thought had some value as an underdog here. I think the same way with Dallas. I thought this lane would be closer to 120 for Nashville, so I'm seeing a little bit of value on Dallas. Yeah, Nashville's played 2 games. They played them against one of the worst teams in the league, and they played them in a different country across the world. So, like Dallas, there is a very good rivalry. These 2 teams have been, I believe they were 1 point away from each other in the standings last year. When I find 2 teams like this that, to me, are pretty close, if not exactly close, I always look for the underdog in these games or the team that has the revenge from the previous matchup. And I've had a lot of success in that regard. So I like Dallas here. And I do want to mention, you talked about props, and I don't do a lot with props. But one thing that I would do is instead of looking at a certain player to hit their prop, run the numbers first. Run the numbers and try to figure out, instead of the players, see what the value is, and then compare them to what the players are. Because as you said, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to want to play on the overs on the big name players, or in reality, a lot of the value from a numbers perspective will be on the guys that don't have that big a name. So you can get some nice plus prices in that regard. So as well that I do, and probably more than I do in that regard, because you play the props. But that's something I always take a look at. And just from watching football games, you play like tonight. We're looking at Thursday Night Football. Unfortunately, we're playing two teams that don't have a lot of stars, but people like to play the overs. And basically, you could just go in for the most part, especially with a total of 38 in this football game. You could probably go in and play the stars under and make some profit on these Thursday night, Monday night, Sunday night games.
And you talk about this game on the board, right? Out of all the games we've talked about so far, this is probably the game that everybody watching our show right now will bet the least, right? Like, this is the game that will slip under the rug tonight, and that's 100%. And you talk about betting the underdog in these situations, betting the underdog and looking at last season's results. And, Dallas in general has really underperformed with the talent that they have. I'm happy that they were able to sign Jason Robertson and get that figured out, and they had the contract issues. But Tyler Seguin and Jamie Benn and just the top core on that team hasn't really been what they should be, I guess, over the last couple of years. That's just my opinion, but I think that they've kind of underachieved. And because of that, we're getting a price like this. I was a bit surprised by it. I'm with you. Underdog for me or pass. I'm not sure if I'm going to get to the window with it, but it might it wouldn't shock me, Bryan. And I know some people think it's funny when I project these things to happen, but it wouldn't shock me if we see the first period over cash and then the game slow down after that. Just with it being Dallas's first game of the year, with Nashville and their return from Europe and settling in. And there's two great goaltenders playing tonight in that game. There's no doubt about that. But it wouldn't shock me to see a fast start and then for this game to slow down a little bit. But Bryan and I both looking towards the underdog in this one. Should be a good game as well. Look, a lot of great games. We picked 4 to break down. Hopefully, we gave you some winners and some great information on today's board. Bryan, before we jump into best bets, I want to ask you what you have going on for clients tonight. You mentioned the NFL game. We've got college this weekend and, of course, a jam-packed NHL Thursday.
Yeah, at this point, I only have up 2 plays in college football Saturday, including a 4% play, number 1 in net profit all season, all year long, 2022 on my 4% plays. I will be putting out more plays today. Wanted to use the Chicago Bears under 20 for a team total, and then it got knocked down to 19 right when I got started to put it up. So that kind of keeps me away from that. I'll find a way to put a play on this game tonight in the NFL that has the best value. As I said, I'm working on the hockey right now. Baseball, I'm looking at some line movements. I want to play Cleveland. I want to make sure I get the right number there. So at this point, I don't have a lot to sell, but just check the site a little bit later on. We'll have everything up for our clients, and hopefully we'll have another winning day.
Awesome stuff. Let's jump into it. Let's wrap this show up. What's your best bet for the show for today? And again, guys, these aren't always client plays. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't, but it's definitely a strong play that both Bryan and I do like. So, Bryan, what's going on for you today for your best bet?
Yeah, we'll go back to the first game we discussed. And I'll play Toronto, but I'll play the goals over 3.5 minus 150. Washington's defense showed some struggles in that first game. Not a big fan of the likely goalie in this game. As you mentioned, Samsonov is going to be going for Toronto against Washington here, against his former team. We've talked about Toronto's big 3 not getting on the board yesterday. I like this situation. Toronto at home. They were excellent at home last year, 31-10, straight up in those games. And so we're going to like it over 3.5, minus 150 for the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Love that play. Definitely should be a good one there, and a little bounce back effort there. And I think that if they go over that total, I do think Austin Matthews will score tonight as well. So keep that in mind, guys, for a goal scoring prop. I have 4% best bet up. I think it's a complete mismatch. I think the game is very wrongly priced. You can grab that over at Wager Talk right now. I will have some plays added to my card. A little bit later on in the afternoon, like Bryan said, I still have some work to do as well, researching the card. Going through goaltenders and lineups. I don't really feel comfortable that often making plays and selections until I've seen morning skate. I follow on Twitter pretty much, probably over 100 writers across the league of all these different teams and reporters. I like to know what they're saying, the players, coaches, all that good stuff. So sometimes you'll see an overnight play for me. Sometimes you won't see them out until around lunchtime. But my play for puck time today, we're going to keep it short and simple. The Pittsburgh Penguins, they're huge favorites. How do I play this game? First period puck line. You can get that plus 100 for them to win the first period. Not money line, but puck line minus a half goal. Bryan, their first line center is Travis Boyd. Their second line center is Barrett Hayton. How many people watching this show know who those guys are? Talk about guys like Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, and of course they signed back with Chris Letang. You've got Jake Gensel, a young player. There's a lot to love about this Pittsburgh team, and they're kind of calling it the last dance with them as well, with this older core that should be in for a great season. They want to get off to a great start to their year. Pittsburgh, first period on the puck line for me, plus 100. Turn a big favorite into a little plus 100 price here in the first period. So great show. I appreciate all of you for tuning in. Love the banter live right now in the chat room. Shout out to Carmine Bianco. I know he's watching right now. Had a great day yesterday, of course, picking up his big check from the NFL Circuit Contest. So congrats once again to him. And we'll see him on the show tomorrow. Recap here of the power plays. I have Pittsburgh on the puck line in the first period, plus 100. Bryan Leonard with Toronto. Team total over 3.5 goals. Thanks so much to my co-host, Bryan Leonard. I'm Andrew. We'll see you guys tomorrow.
Hey, NHL fans, the wait is over. The National Hockey League gets underway on Tuesday, October 11th, and last season, 8 Wager Talk handicappers went over 50 units in the NHL. To celebrate the start of the season, we are offering a 7-day NHL package for only $49. Yes, that's only $7 a day, and it will be valid through Sunday, October 9th. Don't worry, NBA fans, we'll be running the same special for you next week.